Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi, good evening, listeners. You're here with me, Louise Pickering. I'm here joined this evening in my fabulous guest, Rachel Bowers. We will be, hi, Rach. We will be talking all things leadership, hearts in the fray, do nice leaders finish last? Obviously quite a controversial topic. I have with me, as I said, one of my good friends, Rach. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Rach, tell us kind of like a bit about what you've done career-wise and where you're at the moment.
Hi Louise, thank you for having me. So I am currently an assistant head in a very small independent school in Bedfordshire. I've done some senior leadership and some middle leadership roles over my 17-year career. My background is art teaching, but I've led art, dance, drama, food, media, film
everything
studies,
apparently,
science, technology. Anything that falls into the other bucket, that would be me. So I've had a number of leadership roles across a number of different schools, including large multi-academy trusts, small individual schools, and now in an independent school. So a number of experiences with leadership, we shall say.
Nice. It's a very varied career, isn't it?
Yes, but I think most people's are. It's had a bit of a up and down line with a not quite upward overall trajectory. Don't try and say words you can't say when you're speaking to people who are listening.
I feel like for viewers, we should be brutally honest about how much you followed me around in my career.
Oh yeah, it's me following you. Yeah, that's definitely what happened. Because I didn't get qualified first or be anywhere first. So.
Hey, I was only 1 year behind you. So for viewers who are listening in, I actually first worked with Rach. She was in my first school in Milton Keynes. And was it 4 years we worked together? 4 years?
I was only there 3.5 years. So I reckon it was only 2.5 years we were together there.
And then obviously later on, you then followed me a few schools later, didn't you?
Yeah, I stalked you to another school in Buckinghamshire where we were together for only a couple of terms at that one.
It was good though. It was good. Okay, right. Well, lovely. Thank you for coming on. Obviously, it's a real joy. I'm so pleased personally you're here because you've got such a vibe, and this is why we get on. So I think it'd be great for listeners.
There's high expectations now. We should dial that down. I'm an exceptionally boring person. Please don't anybody expect anything different.
I don't think we'd be friends if you were a boring person, Rach. Let's be honest. Okay, are you ready to crack in?
Yeah, although I've been told I'm not allowed to swear, so I'm going to try really hard, everyone. Sorry if everyone sticks out. I'm not in the classroom, and it's, the defences are down.
Just say frick or something else. Just make up your own alternative, which is not offensive.
I'll pretend my kids are in the room.
Okay, nice. Okay, so let's launch straight in then, looking at leadership. So first things first, I want us to discuss, if it's all right with you, what are the negative associations we have when we talk about being I hate doing this, nice leader.
Oh, we'd like an air quote.
I know, yes.
Enjoy that. That's nice, isn't it? Nice people do things like this so they don't cause offence. Nice people aren't controversial. Because we spoke about it, didn't we? And you were like, oh, I hate nice. You were quite avid that nice was a kind of a horrible word, because there are really kind of fluffy connotations, aren't they? It's that thing that people say about women, and it's fluffy and it's maternal and it's vague. It's a bit vanilla, isn't it? It's only a stage above satisfactory, and I'd be horribly offended if someone referred to me as satisfactory in any walk of life. So
it's like the ultimate beige description, isn't it? It's like
magnolia paint's nice, isn't it? Doesn't offend anyone.
Well, don't knock it. I mean, I've just redone my house. It's all been recarpeted, and it's all beige, beige and white.
I don't think this is magnolia. I expect it's something like natural wicker or natural hessian or something along those lines. Not magnolia.
Okay, so we've said then that when we talk about nice leadership, it's funny that you mentioned it tends to be associated with that kind of like soft and fluffy maternal aspects. And I've pulled a face there, and it's not because maternal isn't amazing, because of course it is. It's just the fact it tends to get lumped in, and we associate nice leadership. It's a very gendered expectation and concept, isn't it? It's like, what makes a nice leader? Someone that's softly spoken and someone that's overly sugary and can't have those difficult conversations. Is that kind of how you're seeing this concept?
Yeah, it's the the nice person is the caring, sharing one. But actually, I think what we're talking about today is that idea about being approachable, about being empathetic, a leader who cares about well-being, not just amongst staff, but with the students, with the stakeholders, with families. They create a supportive atmosphere. They are good at listening to people, good at making people feel valued. And it's important to me to think about relationships whenever I think about teaching. And I always think it's relationships first before anything happened. And I think nice leaders build trusting relationships is how I kind of think of it. So it's not meant to be sugary, utopian nice. It's nice with meaning, I suppose.
No, because it's interesting, because when I remember my English GCSE, I had one, we tend to have a couple of inspirational teachers. I know. Hey, I'm 39 next week. I mean, I'm
some of us have stepped over the 40 gate. Wind it in.
But yeah, taking it back to English GCSE, I had a really inspirational teacher, and she was like, "You will never, Louise, you will never use the word nice ever in an exam, because that just isn't specific enough." And I think that might be why this term is just so controversial, because I associate nice with that sugary, gendered concept of fluffy, can't have a difficult conversation. But it's interesting because your concept of nice is kind of more constructive, still assertive, clear and kind. Is that your interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that being a nice person or a nice leader means that you have to always be super liked either. So I guess we'll probably come on to stuff like this. So I think that, having strong values and strong morals is really important. It makes you a good person, and being a good person is generally a nice person. It's interesting how your teacher banned the word nice. I actually banned the word nice in my classroom. My students are doing any kind of artist analysis. They're not allowed to use the word nice. It's too vague. What do you mean by nice? It's far too vague. Don't tell me you like it because it's nice. It's ridiculous. So I also banned that word. But in terms of thinking about myself as a person, I would like to think of myself as a nice person. Now, we did say tonight that we talk about anecdotes, and I do have one about being nice as a leader. I worked with somebody once who a piece of slightly obscene graffiti appeared in one of the kids' toilets about this particular leader.
Well, they're always juicy, though. I know that's awful, because we shouldn't be welcoming graffiti, but sometimes they're really like comedy.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I don't even remember what it said at the time, but I do remember this particular person's reaction to it. It was like they had made it. Honestly, it's like someone had given them a star on the Hollywood Teachers Walk of Fame. And they said something along the lines of, "Oh, you've made it when people are writing rude things about you in bathrooms," as if being unlikable was a badge of honor. And I feel that that's actually really against who I want to be as a teacher and as a leader. And I would much prefer to be called nice, possibly slightly vaguely, than I would for people to dislike me on a really personal level. I don't think that's the way to build culture in a school at all.
And that's interesting, because I think we're going to come back to this concept of building culture, because it's such a hot topic at the moment in education, as you know, but with good reason. But I'm going to hold off on that one. I'm going to come back to that, if that's okay. But I'm here for the anecdotes.
I've got to try really hard not to name any names. I could shame a few. I could shame a few.
Oh, no,
maybe that makes me not a nice person.
Let's not get in trouble.
Slate a load of other people. I did say to my boss that I wouldn't name her. She's actually quite nice, though. If she's listening. Hi.
She isn't like you anymore. Okay, here we go. So that kind of leads us into something we were discussing before the show. One of the books that we're currently both immersed in, funnily enough, at the same time, is Kim Scott's Radical Candor. And I wanted to kind of get your take on it. There are so many interesting points throughout the book. And as I said, I haven't got all the way through, but I think she touches on the idea of having 4 quadrants of leadership. And this idea of actually one of the quadrants being ruinous empathy. And it kind of suggests that we can provide too much empathy, but therefore shy away from more of the difficult conversations. And it's actually a really difficult line to balance, or to find the line. And I kind of wanted to get your take on it, and if you have any fun, juicy person analogies that you want to share.
Well, it's hard, isn't it? Because when you are a caring leader, when you are nice and you are interested in building good relationships and trust in relationships. You get to know people on more than just a professional level. So you do get to know the ins and outs of their stories. And, you know, tragedies hit people and people deal with them in different ways. And there are times where horrible things happen to people and it can put an absolute hole through their lives. And then that has a massive impact on what they do at work. But as a leader, your job is also to ensure the quality of what is going on in that workplace. And so I do think that ruinous empathy is possibly the case when you give someone more and more leeway and you go, oh, you know, they're having an awful time, you know, let's just give them a bit of space, it'll improve. And actually you're sacrificing some chances of some kids by not stepping in sooner, not maybe having a difficult conversation where you have to put some support in place, or you have to work some variety of flexible working out because you don't want to harm further someone that you know is already hurting. And that's really difficult. It is really hard. I don't think anybody wants to be a leader or relishes being the leader that goes in and says, look, I know you're having a hard time, but here's a turd on top of it for you.
It's that, or sometimes it's that dreaded conversation of here's a support or a coaching plan, pre-support plan. And whilst they're meant to be supportive, and you and I have had conversations about this in the past, you know, people you've experienced have gone on them and they haven't been supportive. And like you say, when it comes at a time when so much is going on in your life, or their life, and you're coming in and you're like, I know it's rough. I know it's been rough for a little while and it's probably taking a toll on you. But like you say, we do have to therefore consider, how are we best supporting you in the classroom in this profession? Because of course we need to support the member of staff, A, for the member of staff themselves, but also B, for the
sorry, I'm going to move away from the microphone while I
lying there in the corner. Don't worry.
Septemberitis out.
Don't worry, viewers, we'll save her if there's a problem. But yeah, and at what point you then step in and say, well, this colleague needs support professionally and emotionally, but actually also for the students. And it's difficult, isn't it, as a leader, because especially if you work closely with that person, which most of us do, how you then broach that conversation, or at what point you even say, do you know what, this person is going through something really big. They have got a loved one that's poorly, or, you know, something is changing in their family. Like, at what stage is it acceptable to say, you've got this going on, how can we better support you? But when is it okay to have that conversation? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's difficult to judge, and it is obviously on a case-by-case basis. And those conversations have to be had, because kindness is necessary, but kindness can't then become a problem. You know, if you're just kind and not setting clear expectations of people, then there's passivity to that, isn't there? You're not taking action over something that needs to take action about. What you need to do is still remain kind and still show sympathy for people, but you need to still set clear standards, and then that is principled leadership. And I think anybody who is a professional will understand and appreciate that, even if sometimes that takes time and reflection for them to understand and appreciate it. It's not always easy in the moment.
Yeah, because it is difficult to know, isn't it? Especially when you, like I said, you work so closely with somebody, and teaching is a relational profession. I mean, it's difficult to say any professions aren't relational. Of course they are. But when we're in such tight-knit teams and we're all kind of united by the common cause of helping each other to help the students, the second somebody has something going on in their lives, the automatic instinct as a human being for a lot of people is to cuddle and to socially fawn and to kind of rally around that person. Yeah, and it's like, it is essentially, it's care, isn't it? And good leaders, we're talking about this, do that. They do have the emotional intelligence to be able to say, do you know what, you need care first. You need space, you need someone to listen. And then if you then ask for support, we can then give you support. It's just really difficult to say, do you know what, it's now been 2 weeks or it's now been 3 weeks. And unfortunately, you know, we are seeing an impact on your day-to-day of your job, but we want to support you. But if you've got a colleague that's maybe had a more negative experience of things like coaching plans or even further down the line support plans, it then becomes a really prickly conversation to have. But you're quite right. We need to have them to support people, and they might not appreciate it at the time, but we've got different commitments. You know, we've got a commitment to the children and to families and to the other members of our teams, as well as that colleague.
And I think we're very much a soldier-on profession, aren't we, as well? So whatever somebody's going through, they will be, oh, I'm going to make it through this. I've got to soldier on. It's important that I still stay at it for the kids. But actually maybe don't realise that they're kind of crumbling in themselves and they need to give themselves a bit of time and attention and, put their own breathing apparatus on first before they worry about the children kind of thing, And it's interesting that you say, and if they ask for support, there's often the time where it's gone past the point of them asking for support, and it is more a case of you telling them that it's required, and that's where the prickly conversations certainly are. But you can't shy away from it as a leader. It's what you take on. If you take on leadership, you don't do all just the great rewarding bits when you see the smiles on the face when kids open envelopes and those kind of bits. You take on a fantastic school trip and it's the first time they've ever had that level of freedom. You also take on the bits that are challenging. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. It's your professional duty to do it, and it's your duty to those children in your care that you're doing it.
And I think it's important, though. I mean, there may be some colleagues listening who may be slightly newer to some leadership roles and therefore haven't had to have these conversations yet. But please know you are supported by your HR team, and you should also be supported by your teaching and learning team at senior leadership level if you're at middle leadership level yourself, because those conversations do need to be thought out. They do need to be something that are essentially not scripted in a way that it's uncomfortable, but there are obviously very important legal ramifications for some colleagues. You've got to be having considerations and things like union guidance. So please don't feel alone in them if you have to have those kinds of conversations. They are uncomfortable.
And I remember when I was early on in leadership, actually, I did a course called years and years ago. And one of the sessions in the course was about managing difficult conversations. And I remember thinking, this is something that everybody should do, because it doesn't matter what level of education you're at, you have to manage different conversations. You might be managing it with students in your classroom, you might be managing it at a parent-teacher meeting, you might be having to manage it with staff, you might even have to be managing up, and you might have to be doing it with people that are meant to be your leaders. But I found it really useful, the idea of you've got to have a central thesis and you've got to always come back to your central thesis. And as long as that central idea that you are working around leads your meeting, then you should come to the outcome that is desired. And actually, it's always done well for me, I must admit. So planning, not maybe to the level of scripting, but planning those kinds of conversations, super important.
Nice. Okay, that's interesting, because you touched on something earlier, I think kind of a few minutes ago. You were talking about the balance or the differences between empathy and sympathy. And I don't want to teach anyone to suck heads, because I know most of you know what that means even. But I mean, can you kind of outline your understanding of the differences are and how they might play out in the workplace?
To me, so sympathy is, the ability to feel sorry for somebody, go, well, that's really sad that's happened to you. And empathy is your ability to put yourself in that position. How would I feel if I was in that position? What would I do if I was in that position? And what would I want to be done for me and to me in that position? So as a leader, you do need to have the emotional IQ and the ability to be empathetic, because you do have to be able to understand how another person might be feeling. Now, sometimes that can go a bit far. I've been in a situation where I've been trying to get inside somebody's head and work out what's going to be their next move and what are they going to do, because they're not acting in a rational way. And actually, it's virtually impossible, because you can't be another person. So don't put that pressure on yourself. It's going to go that far. But being able to understand a situation and think about how you would function in that situation is helpful generally, and important to the other person for them to feel understood.
At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
Get a head start on your fresh start with Bloomsbury Education. With 30% off all our books till the end of September, this back-to-school sale is your chance to stock up on CPD titles, classroom resource banks, lesson ideas, and practical solutions to every teacher's pain points. Browse titles on sale from the Like a Ninja series, The Week Junior, and Let's Talk Picture Books, perfect for the new school year. From leadership to inclusivity and maths to mental health, Bloomsbury Education has books for every step of your teaching journey. Welcome back to school at bloomsbury.com/back-to-school sale.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Kapow Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to kapowprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
Interesting. Okay, probably is now a good time to just give a shout out to our generous sponsors. So this show is brought to you by Germs, and also in partnership
by Septemberitis.
but also more importantly in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So if you can, hop onto their website, order some books. I mean, we're discussing lots of different books in this show. Some we can mention, some we can't, but Hachette has lots of good ones for you to choose from. Okay, so we've so far touched upon what we think nice leadership is and the fact that we've got different understandings of it. We've talked about some of your juicy analogies. I hope there's more coming, no pressure.
There are stories.
You can keep the germs though. You can keep those.
I've got a folder behind me of complaints. Do you want me to read those ones?
Excellent. So
not my Christmas list.
Sorry, say again?
Not my Christmas list.
No. Understandable. So I was talking to a couple of colleagues last night when I was putting together the show and thinking about the kind of aspects of this we wanted to explore. And a number of colleagues mentioned to me they'd been kind of looking a lot at Brené Brown's research. Are you kind of au fait with the kind of things that Brené talks about?
No, fill me in.
Okay, so she basically talks about the distinction, again, what we're talking about between empathy and sympathy, which is kind of why I've picked up at this point. But
Does she agree with me?
I mean, who dares to disagree with me?
I am pretty terrifying, even though I'm nice.
And this is something you mentioned earlier about here being kind. And kindness isn't this soft fluff. It isn't afraid to have the hard conversations. It's about saying, this is where we're at this point, and this is where we need to be. And have you got ideas and support along the way that can help plug that gap? And I think it's really interesting to mention because she kind of looks at things in a more emotionally intelligent way. And rather than just assuming that we should be sympathetic and just saying, oh, you know, woe is me or woe you.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, how might you be feeling? And therefore, what's the next thing I should be saying in this conversation? You know, is it okay if I've got a colleague that's upset to then be like, oh, okay, let's keep powering through. And you've got a very upset colleague that's going to be shutting down emotionally and avoiding and not saying very much. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on clarity and the importance of that?
Well, I was looking at some writing from the EEF and people like that. And I was looking at
being evidence informed. We love that.
I know. I was reading Ofsted. Anyway, so I was looking at things like about kindness and difficult conversations and that kind of stuff. And one of the things I came across was that supportive working environments, according to the EEF, supportive working environments are the most popular tool to attract teachers. So this idea of being empathetic and thinking about the individual needs of teachers and not just having this blanket approach and certainly not having a cold demeanour is important for recruitment and retention, which we all know is a huge crisis in every school up and down the land. As I said at the beginning, I work in a small independent school. It's a very attractive place to work. We have tiny classes. It's a really kind environment. We have very supportive parents. We have very high attaining kids. It's a really lovely place to work. And yet recruitment and retention is still difficult for us. So building the culture of kindness, I mean, I don't think that it's called that in our values, but approachable leadership, I think is super important.
Wait, can I pause you there? That's interesting. How is it referenced in any of your places of work? Like because I know in education, we're talking about building and establishing culture and about strategies about how we actually do that. And for years, we've been talking about building ethos for students, and that then automatically de facto becomes part of the staff ethos. But it's interesting to hear how different schools do it with staff. I mean, what's your experience of building staff culture?
Yeah, it's something that is implicit rather than explicit, I would say. It's not something that we've kind of specifically said, you know, here's our kindness charter. Everybody sign it and draw a little love heart over any eye on your name. It's not like that, because people are cynical, aren't they? And they're like, clearly I am. And it's a bit fluffy and a bit nice. But I think it is quite often driven through the ethos expected of students. And one part of our ethos is to be considerate. And that comes in many forms, doesn't it? It is understanding how other people feel and how other people maybe don't function the same way as you, in terms of students, that not everybody learns the same, and to be considerate of how different people learn, to be considerate of the impact that you will have on other people's learning and the environment around you. And that applies to staff and to adults as well. Being considerate with one another in the workplace and creating something harmonious to come into in the place where you spend more time than you do with your family is really important.
So out of all the schools, I know we're not naming names of schools or anything, but
when we go out of all the schools, it's like I've worked up and down the land.
Well, I mean, I'm
not like 20 minutes and jump ship kind of person. Be nice, you.
It's because I'm obviously a grade A flight risk, so I think that everyone else is. And I'm not, though, actually thinking about this. I'm not a flight risk. I go wherever I feel valued. And I know, and I think you're the same. And I think this is what we
do. You go wherever there's supportive working environments, because they are the most popular tool to attract teachers.
Yes, that's exactly what I said in my interview. Talk to me about your supportive learning and work environment. But it is that, though, isn't it? It's like, do I love working here? And I had a conversation. Actually, the nicest thing happened last week. I was having a couple of down days. I mean, I had a migraine. The MPQSL assessment was kicking my butt, as I think the MPQs were kicking a few people's butts.
I did the leading teaching one.
Oh, did you? Ago. My sister did that one.
I need to do it more. I need to stop putting my hand up and saying yes.
Yeah, you got to be a no person.
which definitely feeds into being kind.
Yes, but it's also like
it's synonymous with being a yes person a bit, isn't it? Anywho, so you were having some down days. The MPQ.
Oh yeah, sorry.
You having a migraine. You sent me a selfie without any makeup. It was a horror.
Oh my god, that was a selfie though, was it? And I was saying I love the fact everyone else is like, I'm feeling a bit rough. Oh, there's me, I feel rough.
Anyone who can see this, by the way, don't be fooled. That is a lot of makeup on that face.
What are you talking about? I'm natural. So where was I going with this? So yeah, I was having a bit of a rough week, and my two colleagues, I've got two ladies that I work with. Hello. And they're beautiful to work with. I don't know how I was blessed with those two ladies as human beings, as colleagues. Amazing. And I was having a rough time, and I was like, in honesty, my results weren't where I wanted them to be this year, and I think I'm not alone in that. You know, around the country there are a few of us that were like, oh, that was a rough year, what can we do better? And I was having a moment of self-doubt, and I just sat there like, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. Like I'm not very good at my job. Just the nagging insecurities that I think lots of us have, that many of us are frightened to say out loud. And they said to me, both of them chimed in at lunchtime, you are aware we came to work for you? Oh, what? They were like, we came to work for you. At the interview, we met you and we clicked with you. And I'm like, oh my God. Like I didn't see myself like that, but thank you. That's one of the most kindest things I think I've ever been told in the workplace, that people actually
It's relationships before anything else.
But I mean, I think you and I obviously get on at work, and I think it is difficult being authentic in lots of professional places. But I think when you see someone else that is on the same wavelength, that isn't frightened to kind of be themselves, and all the flaws that we have going on, and all the madness and the occasional mental breakdown.
That many hours a day is exhausting. Like I go into a classroom and I put it on in front of the kids. I'm not doing it in front of my colleagues as well.
No
way. I haven't got the energy. Are you joking? I've got 2 kids in primary school myself. No way have I got the energy to keep acting all day long. No. Have it as you see it.
I don't know how you do it. I have so much respect. The thought I come home alone, and there is a cat here waiting for me, and she does not argue back. And
I've got 4 cats. At least one of them does argue. I do also have a dog, by the way, everyone. I'm not a crazy cat lady. I do also have a dog. I just collect animals. I've got a tame husband too, just so you know. Not too covered in hair.
So we have decided... Not to suit. I love that word. So we have decided then that actually the workplace is really important when it comes to things like recruitment and retention, because they will literally be the things that make or break it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have been on a couple of interviews where I've done that pre-interview walk around just to ascertain if I even want to apply. And then
I always go and visit first. Or
Yeah.
if you can, always go and visit first. Sometimes it's logistically really hard to work it out, but always go and visit first if you can. Absolutely, 100%.
It's like the pre-interview for the people that are interviewing, isn't it? If you're interviewing them, they just don't know it.
Oh, the dog and pony show that goes on an interview day is not real life. Although I must admit, once I went on an interview. I went on an interview once, and I was on maternity leave while I was being interviewed, and the person who was interviewing me, an executive head teacher, went, "Oh, you're one of those breeders, are you?"
I'm sorry, you what?
Called me a breeder. I was like, "Yeah, but I've just had the two, one to replace me and one to replace my husband. I hope that's all right."
How do they make it sound so clinical? They make it sound like you're some kind of operating farmyard.
Are you one of those breeders? Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was hilarious. Like, wow. You know the establishment, by the way.
Okay.
She's going to be trying to fatten it out now because I'm not allowed to name names.
No, but I just the fact that people feel that they can say these things legally, let alone socially, it is. I mean,
it goes back to emotional intelligence, though. Some people think they're really funny, and actually they come across really rude. Maybe that's me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not as emotionally intelligent as I thought I was.
Okay.
I had a lovely person work with me. I'm still friends with her now. She works out in the Middle East these days. She's wonderful, brilliant teacher, one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. She could get a grade 5 out of a kid who literally didn't get a grade in any other subject. You know, she was brilliant. She built great relationships with children. But when she came to work for me, I got her to come to work for me, having worked with her previously. She'd given up teaching. She was doing something else, and I was like, "You don't want to be doing that. What on earth are you doing? You're a brilliant teacher. Like, you're born for it." You know, and I've got some really gritty kids who love these kind of kids. They were really her type of kids. She'd been at a very affluent school and hadn't enjoyed it. She loved a gritty kid. And I was like, "Come on, you'll really enjoy it. Come and do it." And she got the job, and she was brilliant. And she worked there for a good amount of time. And then she was moving out to the Middle East to go and work tax-free. It's very attractive. I don't blame you in the slightest.
My cousin's out there, and one of my best friends. It's very handy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Oh, you were there recently, weren't you? I was there.
Yeah, I'm going again in Feb. Like, I've already booked flights.
Look at my skin. I'm not made for the heat, but it was lovely nonetheless. And at her leaving speech, she was like, "Oh, I've given up with teaching," but then Rachel rang me up and said, "Come and work for me." And you don't say no to Rachel because she's terrifying. I was like, "I'm not terrifying. I'm the least terrifying person I know." What are you talking about? Apparently, I'm terrified of some people.
Well, I'm not terrified of you, but then again, both of us can like hold our ground with the literal.
Yeah, you're terrifying. That's what it is.
What is it? These eyes, like it's
yeah, it's getting that close to the camera.
Is it that and the selfie?
The crazy eyes.
Okay, anyway, let's bring it back.
Maybe we label ourselves as nice people and kind people, but to other people we're terrifying. I do think it was tongue in cheek, by the way. I am good friends with her now. I still see her when she comes back. Right. I tried to catch up with her when I was in Dubai, but I was far too busy at a cat cafe.
Oh my God, I've never been one. I actually do need to go to one. Okay, right.
Yeah, it's like being in your own house, but with more cats.
Nice. I'm going to bring it back because I know I'm aware that you and I are off on a random conversation and people will be like, what are they talking about? So let's bring this right back to leadership then. So I have a colleague, Magnus Wallace. He's fantastic. He was originally at school. Yeah, he was a deputy head and he's gone off to be a primary school teacher, head of a primary school in our trust. Very well established. It's just, I actually, funnily enough, came to work at Weavers for Magnus because on my pre-interview walk around, I was like, I get you. And we were talking about emotional intelligence. And there was many a time, I mean, I'd got my job in March. And there was many a time where I had the occasional breakdown of, oh my God, I don't know if I can build a department. I don't know if I can reverse results in some subjects. I mean, they're very good, but there was turnaround needed. And the amount of times he picked up the phone and said, "Lou, we've picked you. Like, we have picked you for a reason." And so I came to work for him for that reason. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so long and short of it is, he's pretty much an expert when it comes to things like health and well-being and emotional intelligence, as well as psychology, which is why we get on so well. And actually, he was talking about something that you and I were teetering on the edge of earlier, thinking about at what point do we have to then think about the impact or weighing up supporting a colleague and being empathetic, but also needing to bring about rapid change. Mm-hmm. And about how to find that balance, because I think there are many situations around the country where rapid change is needed. You know, results have come in. and schools in upheaval around, you know, whatever it is, they're changing leadership structures, they're changing curricula, there needs to be, sometimes there's a lot of high staff turnover, still post-migraine, and that change needs to happen quickly. How do you strike that balance between doing that rapid change, getting the outcomes for the students, but actually still balancing kindness and constructive leadership?
Are we talking about underperforming staff here?
I don't know. You can go at it from any angle, somewhere where there needs to be rapid change. And obviously, inevitably, that's going to impact the students.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like underperforming staff, and unchecked underperforming staff can absolutely harm pupil outcomes. And pupil outcomes are going to follow those people around for the rest of their lives. The school I'm in at the moment actually is quite new to secondary. We've got our first year 11 cohort this year. And I've talked to them about the importance of making it your priority just for the next 8 months. Like, it seems like forever right now when you're a teenager. But I say, you know, this is going to follow you around for the rest of your life. I'm in my 40s, and if I apply for a job, I have to tell them what I got in my GCSEs. You know, we're talking about the year 2000, and I'm still having to write down what I got for those GCSEs. So it's important to make it priority. And if you've got underperforming staff, it is going to affect those kids, and then that's going to follow them around. And that has to be checked. You can't let that slide. It's not possible. And so, you know, that's why appraisal and capability guidance exists. And as a leader, as difficult as it is, you have to go through those processes in order to make positive change. And you need to make positive change for that community that you have, you know, sent your loyalty to. And it's difficult. Some people can be very likable and still be underperforming teachers. We are recruiting for a couple of positions where I work at the moment, and we were talking about our interview process. And I was like, it's always teaching first. Always see them teach first. There's no point talking to them in an interview until you've seen them in the classroom, because a fantastic teacher can be shocking at interview, but someone can absolutely talk it up and be awful in the classroom. So, you know, it can't, I feel like I've totally got off topic there, but underperformance can't go unchecked. You have to make sure that the right people are in the right jobs. The person in front of the kids has to be giving them the daily diet that allows them to succeed, and they have to be expert enough to know how to tailor it to allow those kids to succeed. And I'm not saying that's easy, and it's certainly harder in some contexts than others, but being kind doesn't mean letting things go.
And I think it's interesting. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
And being kind isn't just about being kind to staff. You know, those children in front of you are who you work for, and being kind to them and being kind to their futures should really be in your focus.
And that's interesting, because sometimes when there's been lots of change and upheaval, it can be our go-to human nature, like, oh, but I work with that person, I love that person. And it's like, but that doesn't automatically mean that person is right for that particular role at that point in time. Yeah. And it isn't sometimes our decision to even have those conversations. Like, there are people at different levels above us that are more equipped to decide those kind of things. Is that person in the right role? And actually, sometimes we do have to sideline our friendships and be like, is this in the best interests of our students? Are we getting what we need for our students? And if we're not, is there somebody that needs to be making these uncomfortable decisions? Because that is part of effective leadership, as uncomfortable as that is.
And being the person in leadership who is responsible for capability, and I have been that person, is a crappy place to be. Like, you are always the villain in that story. There's no way that you come out smelling the roses when you're in charge of capability, because someone's going to be upset. And they're going to be upset because they're disappointed with themselves and their own performance, or they're going to be upset because they can't hold themselves accountable, or they're going to be upset because they think you're being unfair in some way, and they're going to call in the unions. And no leader, in my experience, and I can't say this is the case across the board because I have heard some horror stories, no leader in my experience wants to go down the capability route because it is a pain in the butt. There is so much time that you have to spend supporting and observing and doing the admin and the paperwork and having meetings. Honestly, it is an absolute time suck. There is no way that I would want to put somebody on capability that didn't need to be there. If I just wanted somebody out of a school because, you know, they're a pain in the neck, have a professional conversation about it. If they're being a pain in the neck, they probably don't want to be there either. Come to an agreement. I don't want to put people through capability for that reason. So, you know, I realise that if I'm putting someone on capability, which thankfully I don't have to do at the moment, but I have in the past, you always come out as the villain. Nobody likes that as an outcome.
But I think it's really important.
Even when they come off capability, it won't have been a nice process.
But there should be. I mean, there really should be things like coaching plans in place prior to things like capability.
And support plans,
it should be. They should be supportive. And if you're going down the capability route, it's meant to be supportive, but there's a more fear factor there. There should be kind of stages in between, and most schools have them, thankfully. And like you say, it's really important that you have people that actually are effective leaders that know where that line is of, I am empathetic, I am here to listen and support, and I am going to deliver this conversation in a way that's supportive. But actually, kindness is about being clear. You aren't quite doing what your remit is. You know, we've asked you to make these changes. We've provided the support for you to make these changes, and they haven't yet happened. So let's talk about the barriers.
I observed you on X day and your feedback was this. I'm now observing you again and your feedback's the same because you haven't acted upon it. It's not because I want you to do badly. It's because you're not acting on the feedback that you're being given, you know. And yeah, absolutely. There are support plans and coaching plans and mentoring, all sorts of stuff that comes way before any of that happens. But even at the point when, you know, support plan or coaching plan is whispered, at that point, you're already a villain. Yeah. And you have to be okay with that as a leader because you've got to do the right thing for the kids.
And there's something I kind of wanted to touch on, which is a bit more niche. If we're talking about capability and we're talking about effective leaders being able to have those conversations and being clear and still kind and empathetic at the same time, we also touched on earlier about building culture. How do you go about building positive culture? Because it's something we're talking about a lot, and we've just talked, you've mentioned the EEF and the guidance about building a positive working environment, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to recruitment and retention. How do you actually build a culture? Should it be something that you mentioned that in some of your schools has been more implicit? Should this kindness culture be more explicit at both staff and student level? And what are the actual strategies? Because it's a lot of waffle, I feel like. And I've had the privilege of having a lot of leaders come in to my school and actually talk about tangible strategies. And I wanted to get your thoughts. What could we actually do to build a supportive culture where there is kindness and it is embedded?
Yeah, it's difficult because a lot of it is about personalities and how personalities work together. You know, the more people you work with, the more likely you are to find your tribe, but equally the more likely you are to come across somebody that you don't really gel with as well. And that obviously causes difficulties. I've never worked in a school where kindness has been this explicit thing that has been talked about and expected. Generally, it's just been, you know, we're all adults and we're all professionals and we all know how to treat each other. And I would say 90% of people I've worked with are kind people. Their heart's in the right place. Even if they're not the most effective teacher in the world, they are nice, good people. There are very few people that I've worked with who are unkind and deliberately unkind and vengeful and vindictive, but I have worked with those people as well. I think a concern for well-being is really at the root of it. We have a well-being day at our school. You know, you can have a day off in the year. You can book it as and when you want. Yeah, which is lovely. My friend of mine got married on a Friday this year, and I took my well-being day so I could go to a weekday wedding. And because everybody gets one, then everybody's happy to cover for people when they take theirs. It's pretty cool like that. We also have stuff that's not structured, so we're a through school, but the secondary is quite small. We like to do a wellbeing Wednesday, so we all bring something in and we'll have a shared lunch. It's usually cheese, so
obviously.
More often than not, it's Cheese Wednesday, but that makes everyone happy. And those kind of things show that we've actually built really good relationships with each other, that we all kind of like muck in and do that kind of stuff, that we all clearly find that quite important. But then I guess at the root of that is then being good at recruitment, because if you recruit the wrong person, they can absolutely blow a missile through your entire team. I've had that experience before, someone who seemed like spot on at interview, and then within a couple of weeks the cracks have really started to show, and then you work with someone who's not pulling their weight, that puts a lot of pressure on other people and then creates animosity, and then that leads to people being unkind. So I think maybe careful and considered recruitment is super important. Very hard to do in an environment where sometimes you just have to take the person who's applied, so it's easy.
Sorry, do you mind if sorry, I'm just cutting you off there. I'm dying, I've got a point. It's interesting actually, because I know we talk about kindness being implicit, but I feel like I'm slightly controversial here. Maybe it feels cringy to do, but I feel like actually sometimes for kindness to be a meaningful, effective strategy, many of us would benefit from building that into things like our school vision, and not just for the students. I mean, building it into aspects of everything that staff do. And whilst we cringe, I think some of us, I automatically cringe about it because aspects of me are like emotionally avoidant. I found out this about myself. Actually, the amount of times when people have said to me, Louise, someone said to me last night, that was a really kind thing that you said. And I'm like, oh God, I've been called kind. It's so uncomfortable. But the more...
You also don't like a compliment, though.
No, I don't. I really struggle. I need them because I'm deeply insecure, but I really struggle with them.
But then you have to like brush them away. Like, no, you can't possibly do that.
Yeah. But I feel like sometimes for that to work, it has to be something that's strategized, and it has to be something that is consensual at staff level, because I don't think we can ask our students to be kind if staff haven't actually properly mastered it. And I think it's nice.
They witness unkindness,
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think most people that, from my experience, that go into the profession, we're all there for the same thing. I mean, a couple of people are like, I just want to hold off until I retire, or I'm just doing this because there's nothing else I really want to do. But I think most people in teaching that I know of, we're all dedicated to the same cause, to equity, to making a difference, to plugging that gap for students.
At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
Get a head start on your fresh start with Bloomsbury Education. With 30% off all our books till the end of September, this back-to-school sale is your chance to stock up on CPD titles, classroom resource banks, lesson ideas, and practical solutions to every teacher's pain points. Browse titles on sale from the Like a Ninja series, The Week Junior, and Let's Talk picture books. Perfect for the new school year. From leadership to inclusivity and maths to mental health, Bloomsbury Education has books for every step of your teaching journey. Welcome back to school at bloomsbury.com/back-to-school sale.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
But I feel like there are times when you say, I get it wrong. We all get it. I know, shock horror, I get it wrong. I get it wrong a lot. And I think actually when there are structures in place to support you to have the right kinds of conversations, you find yourself being kinder because you're more thoughtful and more reflective. Mm-hmm. So you have, conversations that are less bulldozy. I have to often go away and think, oh, Louise, you can't just say that as it is. Your neurodivergent black and white brain is going to sound offensive out loud. And so I have to be supported in saying, actually, I need to have this difficult conversation with somebody. But if there's a support system in place, and that whole structure of our staffing system has been built around having effective conversations, kindness always being at the root, well-being always being at the root, then it becomes easier to have those conversations. And whilst it's cringy to say this is kindness, it's really difficult to then, I think, to rely on things being implicit. There needs to be something, particularly at top level, where we're like, this is how we're actually tangibly going to inbuild the language and the culture in our staff as a team, in the separate teams. What are we going to do on CPD days? How is that going to thread through? What kind of language will we allow between our staff? You know, what kind of, I remember that you and I, when we first worked at our first school, I made the mistake of saying, I think in my NQT year, that students were challenging. Woo!
Oh, yeah, don't say things like that at school.
Woo! I mean, I was shouted at.
That'd be a you problem.
As I was 22 years old and I was shouted at. Oh my gosh, I still remember that. But again, it's about saying this is the language that we're going to use. And it's the language behind that builds the structure and the culture. And it needs to be a committed effort. And we all need to get through the cringe of saying this is what kindness is. It isn't fluff. It isn't softness. It's constructive leadership that people are supported with things like training. Sorry, I feel like I've gone off on a...
I wonder actually whether it's something that is more common in primary than in secondary. You know, you and I are both secondary specialists. So I wonder if there's any primary school teachers listening that are like, yeah, you know, we have a kindness charter and we expect that staff act upon it in the same way that we expect students to act on it. I'm conscious, by the way, that the sun's slowly going down. I'm going to be sat in the dark at some point, but it's okay. We've only got 10 minutes left. I haven't turned the light on.
That's a good point, though. I'm in my ignorance, like you said, I'm a secondary specialist. So by all means, primary specialists, you know, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like there's now I work in a through school and I had really very little experience of primary before this. I feel like there definitely is more of that modelling of behaviour and expecting the students to see behaviour from the adults that they should then be showing themselves. And I don't think that's ever something that is taught to people who train as secondary teachers. And so it's not something you think to do. It's like it's such a second nature to you. Like you have to break down your subject knowledge when you're teaching it. You don't think to break down your behaviour with another adult in case students witness that. Like you think about how you behave in front of the students and how you would word things in front of students and model it the best there. But you know, an off the cuff remark in passing to somebody, do I think about that and how I'm modelling that in front of students? I probably don't.
But I think, like I say, I think we do. I think we need to, don't we? We need to literally be saying, okay, this is the behaviour that we're modelling to students. We can't ask students to have a culture if staff don't have one. And staff can't have one just on token insets or just the occasional be kind conversation. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what is the evidence behind culture? And I'm blessed that I have so many colleagues on LinkedIn, like I said, like Lekha Sharma, Dr. Jill Berry, talking about what culture is, but tangibly, how do we bring that in? So thinking about Amy Edmondson's psychological safety, how? Like we need tangible. It just needs to not be a conversation. It needs to be something we're doing. I kind of want to take this conversation in a slightly different direction, if that's okay.
Well, it's quite useful to me, actually, because we're about to rewrite our values for our students, so I can really kind of get this stuff into my workplace. So I find it really useful.
I love that. Direct application.
Go on then, you segue into something else. Go on.
Okay, sorry. Neurodivergence. This is also something I'm hot on because we have been talking about neurodivergence for students and how we lead with kindness with our students, how we teach with kindness, things like zones of regulation, how we understand their needs, how we accommodate and celebrate those. And I want to talk about what does kind and effective leadership look like when you've got a colleague that has aspects of or is neurodivergent. And in fact,
as someone who's neurotypical, it's something that's quite difficult to think about, but it's nothing's a one size fits all. And I have gone back a number of times saying, you know, it's about relationships and the ability to build trust. And that is done on an individual basis. So understanding the individual is super important, regardless of whether they are neurodivergent or not. Understanding how somebody likes to be led, how conversations hit with people, how level of detail might be used to some and strategic overview might be used to others, how sometimes things need to be made very clear and very black and white, and you can't let stuff slip through the gaps with people. It's having good relationships and understanding the individuals that you're leading in order to lead them effectively that is important. But I'm not the neurodivergent one, so it's probably better you tell me.
Yeah. I don't know. I can only obviously speak for mine. And it's really important that you've said that actually I'm neurodivergent, as many people are, but the different types of neurodivergence are varied and they're very, very different. So I have BPD, and the way that my brain has formed under bits of trauma as a child, I say bits of trauma, that's an understatement, under trauma in my childhood, means that my nervous system is wired a lot differently to a lot of other people's. And so actually the most effective leaders I've ever had, the first conversation when they come and talk to me is, hi, tell me about you. And I'm very proactive in saying, this is a really key part of who I am. There's lots of wonderful aspects, things like creativity and empathy, super empathy that come with that. But actually there are some challenges that I personally will face. And you have to be quite clear as somebody being led, this is how I do or don't work. And the most effective leaders will have that first conversation will be, talk to me about yourself. How do you like to be led? How do you like to be communicated with? Like, at what time of the day is it not acceptable to contact you? You know, is there certain language that we can't use because it's triggering of deep trauma? And for me, that's where effective, kind leadership is. It isn't about being fluff. It's about listening and then responding to your needs effectively. It's not hearing, it's not asking for a conversation, like, how are you feeling? Oh, we ought to have a coffee one day. No, it's how are you actually feeling? If it's not okay, talk to me. What do you need? And be clear, what is it you actually need? And a lot of us are quite comfortable. I think a lot of humans are quite comfortable in saying, this is actually what I need. Can you provide it? And good leaders will then go away and reflect on it and be like, yes, I actually can provide this. I may need some support providing it, but, you know, supporting each other to support each other. But it's about having that open dialogue and being comfortable to say, I am neurodivergent. These are my needs. And a leader needs to actually listen and stop assuming the needs, because they're so different between, they're different between anybody anyway, regardless of whether you're neurodivergent or neurotypical.
Yeah, it's knowing your individuals. It really is. I had a senior leader who was my line manager once, and there'd been a bit of a kind of move around in senior leadership, and I changed leaders. So I'd had somebody that I built a fairly good relationship with, and he kind of understood my processes. I'm one of those people that needs to go and have a rant, not because I need someone else to go and fix it for me, but I need it out of my system so I can fix it myself. And he kind of got me, and we were fine. And then they had this shake up, and someone else became my line manager. He was the deputy head, in fact. And he was an interesting character. He started off by asking me questions in front of other people that I knew he already knew the answer to. And I was like, he's not asking me that because he needs to know the answer. Like, what is he doing? And it was very kind of testing behavior. And I went back to my old line manager and I was like, does he do this to everybody? Because I'm not going to get on with that. Like, we're going to fall out. That doesn't work for me. And he was like, you're just going to need to learn to bite your lip, because he's in a position of authority and he's not going to like it if you speak up about it. And I thought, oh, this ain't going to go well, is it? So literally the next meeting, I went, if you're going to ask me questions that you already know the answer to, just so you can test me on them, you and I aren't going to get along. And he was like, oh. And he got all really like flappy and funny. Oh, well, should I also be referring to you by your formal name? And I was like, no, but treat me like somebody who knows what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah, read the room.
Yeah. And actually after that, it really cleared the air, and he was much better a leader, and we got on absolutely fine. So, you know, it's not just knowing who you're managing, but it's also telling the people who are managing you what works. And maybe I'm a bit blunt and belligerent about it, which could sometimes backfire, but in that particular circumstance, I was told it was going to, and it didn't.
But that's also interesting, because we're talking about actually the responsibility of a leader to be kind. But actually, if you're part of a team, which all of us are, many teams, it is also really kind from your end to find the confidence to say, actually, this does or doesn't work for me. and to make it clear, because clear is kind both ends. It's not
Yep.
just the leader's responsibility to try and dig around and be like, oh God, what do you need? It's also anyone's responsibility to be like, to communicate. This is not okay with me. It isn't for this particular reason. Can we try this route or try this solution or this? What are your thoughts? And have an actual professional dialogue where both people are able to be open and transparent, and neither goes away worrying about the hidden subtext.
And we expect kids to be able to be honest and open and act on feedback and that kind of stuff, don't we? So why would we hold adults to a completely different standard? You know,
there's one thing I know we're pushing time. Sorry,
something.
I know we're pushing time, but there's one question I really want to sneak in there because it's a juicy one. So we talked about what kindness is, what it isn't.
Yes.
Building a culture, strategizing and actually building it in with staff as well as students. And then talk about things like capability. Last thing, we know obviously it's pivotal, it's huge. We've talked about the fact it impacts retention and recruitment, everything. It's a relational profession. Should we therefore, ready for this, should we build this into an appraisal policy?
The problem is, it's not exactly quantifiable, is it? You can't go, oh, here's my kindness data. But you can look at things like the outcome of well-being surveys, for example. You can look at retention. You can look at sickness days and absences. So you can judge whether a school is a nice environment to be in. I bet you went to work this week, right?
Yeah.
Even though I know you had a migraine, you felt like crap.
I was blind for 3 hours yesterday as I taught, and I had aphasia. So my kids were like, "You're right." They were so good.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably rubbish, but
thanks for building my confidence. I so needed that.
But the thing is, you went to work because you wanted to be there for your colleagues and you wanted to be there for those students. I felt appalling last week, but we had speech day on Friday and there was no way I wasn't going to be at speech day because I chair speech day and I didn't want to land someone else in it, having to stand up in front of a massive auditorium full of people and have to use a microphone. Like that kind of thing is showing, isn't it? So absence rates and people who are, you know, particularly long-term sick, those rates really go up in less kind, less accommodating environments. So whether it could be written into appraisals, I don't know. Obviously, the duty of care exists anyway. How much people see that in terms of caring about kindness. I think there is a big push for people to see it about caring about well-being. But I don't know that you could particularly build it into appraisal with teaching staff. I think maybe with higher level staff in terms of what are you doing to ensure retention of teachers? What are you doing to reduce absences, to reduce cover, that kind of stuff, to improve well-being, then it could certainly be built in there.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're saying it's not quantifiable, but then again, the problem therein lies, if it's not quantifiable, how do we know that actually staff are actually experiencing well-being, or that they are being supported, or that they are actually even on the receipt of kindness from their line manager?
Because they don't leave.
Interesting. But is that the reason that people would stay? Is that the only reason?
It's not the only reason. I wouldn't, like, no offense to my school, I love my job, but I wouldn't do it for free just because they were nice to me, you know? Yeah. Still got to pay the bills. It's not the only reason people stay, but a school culture that makes you feel like you are part of the importance is a big reason to hang around.
Yeah, interesting. So thanks for your time today, Rach. I think we've had some great conversation.
It's the crook now. Are you like?
Yes, is it? But there is
music. No, I've not finished my speech yet.
No, I promised you a special guest.
Oh yeah, you did. Is it your cat? I haven't got any of mine in here.
I think you may remember this one.
Is it a crocheted cat?
Yes, it is. And he still has a crocheted pencil
on my apron at school that the kids still refer to. Yeah,
I love that. I've also got that inappropriate expletive crochet situation going on upstairs. Oh, cross stitch. I lie. The offensive cross stitch.
And when she says upstairs, she means in her house, not in her anatomy.
But no, it's been good. I've loved having you on the show. I've loved hearing your experiences because obviously I think you've had very different experiences to me at some point, and I think it's wonderful for listeners to kind of hear about differences, particularly between working in independent school versus in state schools, different kind of line managers that I think you may have experienced. So I think if we're going to wrap this up, what are we saying? Kind and effective, not nice, because I don't really like the word nice because it's just too subjective. I can't do that. My English teacher won't let me do that. Sorry, Miss Rafer. So kind, effective leadership. Yeah. Please, can you summarize it for me so that we know that we're all at the same endpoint and we know what this is?
Kind, effective leaders build relationships that are trusting. They build environments where people feel listened to, and they ensure retention of staff. And I will leave it down to the listeners to decide whether you and I are kind and or effective.
God knows. God, I hope so. I hope.
No, don't do it. Be shattering.
Well, no, thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you very much for listeners for tuning in, or if you're playing back on YouTube. I hope that obviously you've maybe kind of been reassured in your own experiences. Feel free to reach out to me at any point on LinkedIn. I'm under Louise Marie, or indeed Rachel Bowers. On my show in 2 weeks' time, I will have the prominent educationalist Claire Harley. Also, just like you, Rach, prominent educationalist, Claire Harley. She will be talking to us about how she balances a full-time SLT role in her current school, and also how she manages her personal academic CPD. She's undertaking lots of academia outside, which would be an interesting one. And selfishly for me, because I'm looking at doing my master's. So for anyone else who's got any thoughts or questions about how they're juggling their full-time job and things like doing a master's or a doctorate outside, please do get in touch before that show happens. But on that note, viewers, I will leave you to have a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Rach. Off you go. You're now in the dark.
I know, it's gradually getting dark. It's the light of my computer. It's like Halloween.
Excellent. Right, well, have a lovely evening, everyone, and we will see you later.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.